Hello, and thank you so much for coming in today. We are looking for someone who can really anchor our front desk and keep the office running smoothly. I have your resume here, and it looks like you have about 3 years of experience in administrative roles. To start things off, why don't you tell me a bit about your philosophy when it comes to the front desk? What do you consider the most important quality for someone in this position?
Thank you for having me. I am really glad to be here. In my experience over the last few years, I have found that the most important quality for a successful front desk professional is strong communication skills. It sounds simple, but it is actually quite multifaceted. To me, it means being able to listen carefully to what a guest or a colleague needs, speaking clearly to avoid any misunderstandings, and most importantly, adapting your tone to fit the situation. If a client walks in feeling stressed or hurried, my communication style shifts to be more calming and efficient. If it is a high-level executive visiting, I shift to a more formal, polished tone. Good communication is what allows you to greet guests warmly and answer questions accurately, but it is also what helps you handle problems calmly. It is the foundation for coordination with the rest of the staff, and is ultimately what leaves that first positive impression on anyone who walks through the door.
Agree completely. First impressions are everything in this role. You mentioned listening as a part of that. A lot of people think listening is passive, but in a busy office, it has to be active. How do you personally define effective active listening, and how do you actually demonstrate that to a visitor or a coworker?
You are absolutely right. Active listening is far from passive. It is a conscious effort to fully focus on the speaker, truly understand their message, and then respond thoughtfully. For me, demonstrating this starts with nonverbal cues. I make sure to maintain eye contact and nod to show I am engaged. I avoid interrupting, even if I think I know where the person is going with their point, because interrupting can make a guest feel undervalued. Once they have finished speaking, I like to use paraphrasing. I might say, just to make sure I have this right, you are looking for the conference room on the 3rd floor, and you need a guest Wi-Fi pass for your presentation. Is that correct? This confirms my understanding and shows the speaker that I was genuinely paying attention. I also use clarifying questions if any part of the request is vague. The ultimate goal is to make the person feel heard and valued while ensuring that the communication is crystal clear before I take any action.
That's a great approach. It prevents a lot of those small errors that can snowball. Speaking of errors, let's talk about the technical side of the job. Many people underestimate the administrative burden of a front desk. In your view, why is attention to detail such a critical skill for this specific role?
I believe attention to detail is the most critical skill because, in administration, small mistakes often lead to very large problems. If I overlook a single digit in a phone number or misspell a client's name on a welcome sign, it might seem minor to some, but to the client, it looks unprofessional and careless. It can erode trust before the meeting even begins. Then there are the operational risks. An incorrect data entry in a client file or a missed appointment on a calendar can cause massive delays and confusion. In some cases, it can even lead to financial losses if a billing detail is missed or a contract is misfiled. By being detail-oriented, I ensure smooth operations and a professional experience for everyone. It is about creating a system where accuracy is the standard, which reduces errors and builds a high level of trust within the workplace.
I appreciate that perspective. Let's put that into a real-world scenario. Imagine you are managing a complex scheduling system. You realize a mistake was made, perhaps a double booking or a missed update, and it affects multiple departments. What is your immediate corrective action protocol? Walk me through it.
In a situation like that, My priority is containment and transparency. My protocol involves 3 key steps. First, I would immediately pause any further scheduling changes to the affected slots. I do this to prevent the issue from spreading or creating more conflicts while I am trying to untangle the current mess. Second, I would quickly assess the scope of the mistake. I need to identify exactly which departments, teams, or individuals are affected and determine the severity. For example, is this just a 30-minute overlap, or is a critical client meeting completely displaced? I gather all the facts first, so I am not guessing when I communicate. Third, I communicate clearly with all impacted parties. I don't hide the error. I acknowledge it, explain exactly what happened, outline the steps I am taking to fix it, and provide a realistic timeline for the resolution. I find that people are much more forgiving when you are honest and proactive. The goal is to contain the problem, gather accurate information, and maintain transparency to minimize disruption and rebuild trust as quickly as possible.
That sounds like a very mature way to handle a crisis. Now, thinking about the day-to-day, you'll be juggling a lot. I want to know how you handle the volume. Can you walk me through your process for managing multiple calendars and scheduling those complex, multi-person meetings?
For me, it starts with consolidation and clear communication. I prefer to use tools like Outlook or Google Calendar to create a single, unified view of all relevant calendars. This is the only way to truly avoid conflicts. I start by prioritizing meetings based on urgency and importance, and I always block off time for high-priority tasks first so they don't get pushed aside by smaller requests. When it comes to multi-person meetings, I identify the key attendees and check their shared calendars. If the calendars aren't fully transparent, I'll send out a scheduling poll to find the best common window. I also make it a point to account for time zones if we have remote participants, as well as adding buffer times between meetings so people aren't rushing from one call to the next without a break. Once the time is locked in, I send a formal invitation that includes the agenda, any required preparation, and the necessary documents. I don't just send a calendar invite. I make sure the purpose of the meeting is clear. I also follow up with reminders a day or two before the meeting. If a conflict arises last minute, I negotiate adjustments or find alternative solutions immediately, always keeping all stakeholders informed so no one is left wondering why a meeting was moved.
It sounds like you have a very structured system. Let's pivot to the tools you use. Aside from the basics, which software or tools do you consider essential for modern front office management?
I think a modern front office needs a combination of tools to streamline operations and improve the guest experience. A property management system, or PMS, is essential for things like reservations, check-ins, and billing. Then there is CRM software, which is vital for tracking client interactions and preferences so we can provide a personalized experience. For internal coordination, I rely on communication platforms like professional messaging apps or email for quick team syncs. I also find scheduling tools for staff shifts and appointments indispensable. Beyond that, tools for document management and secure payment processing are a must for efficiency. The exact combination depends on the industry and the size of the business, but those categories, PMS, CRM, communication, and scheduling, form the foundation of a high-performing front office.
We've talked a lot about the systems, but let's talk about the people. The front desk is often the first line of defense for the company. How do you define professionalism in an office setting, and how do you maintain that while still being welcoming?
Professionalism, to me, means behaving in a way that consistently shows respect, responsibility, and competence. It is the baseline of how we represent the company. This includes the obvious things like being punctual and dressing appropriately, but it goes deeper. It is about communicating clearly and politely, handling tasks efficiently, and maintaining a high level of confidentiality. It also means staying focused on the work at hand and treating every single person, regardless of their rank, with courtesy. Regarding the balance between being welcoming and professional, I see it as creating a warm, approachable atmosphere without compromising our security protocols. I want every visitor to feel comfortable and welcome the moment they walk in, a friendly greeting, a smile, and a genuine offer of assistance. However, that warmth doesn't mean I skip the rules. I can be incredibly polite while still firmly verifying a visitor's identity, issuing a required badge, or monitoring access to restricted areas. The key is consistency. If I am consistently polite, but consistently firm with the security procedures, people don't feel like they are being interrogated. They feel like the office is well run and secure.
That's a great distinction. Now, let's get into some tougher scenarios. You'll either encounter someone who is confused or someone who is angry. Suppose you have to communicate bad news, maybe a service cancellation or a delayed appointment, to a client who is already frustrated. What is your approach and what does your script look like?
In those moments, the most important things are empathy, clarity, and a focus on the solution. I never start with the bad news abruptly. First, I acknowledge their frustration. I might say, I completely understand why this is frustrating for you, and I apologize for the inconvenience this has caused. This shows them I am on their side, and that I recognize the impact of the situation. Then, I explain the situation honestly and concisely. I avoid using corporate jargon or giving unnecessary, rambling details that can sound like excuses. If the mistake was on our end, I take full responsibility immediately. I don't shift blame to another department. Most importantly, I immediately pivot to the solution. I would say something like, while we cannot fulfill the original time, I have already looked at the schedule, and I can offer you a priority slot tomorrow morning, or I can arrange for a manager to call you right now to find an alternative. I keep my tone calm and professional, and I give them space to express their feelings before I move toward the resolution. The goal is to turn a negative experience into a manageable one.
That's a very professional way to handle a volatile situation. Following that theme, have you ever had to deal with someone who wasn't just frustrated, but actually aggressive or hostile? How did you handle that, and what was the outcome?
Yes, I have encountered that in the past. When dealing with an aggressive person, my first priority is to de-escalate the situation while setting very clear boundaries. The key is to remain completely calm. If I get defensive or raise my voice, the situation only escalates. I use active listening to let them vent, acknowledging their concerns without taking their behavior personally. I use neutral language and a low, steady tone of voice. I try to redirect the conversation away from the emotion and back toward the problem we need to solve. For example, I might say, I can see that you are very upset, and I want to help you resolve this. Let's look at the facts together so I can figure out the best way to fix this for you. However, I also know when a situation has crossed a line. If a person becomes abusive or threatens safety, I involve a supervisor or security immediately. In the specific instance I am thinking of, by staying calm and focusing on the solution, I was actually able to get the person to lower their voice and eventually resolve the issue. The outcome was that the client felt heard, and the situation was resolved without any further escalation.
It takes a lot of discipline to stay calm in those moments. Let's shift gears to the internal side of things. You are the hub of the office. How do you manage and prioritize your own tasks when you have a dozen different things hitting your desk at once?
I rely on a system of urgency versus importance. Every morning, I start by listing everything that needs to be done. Then I sort them. Tasks with tight deadlines or those that have high consequences, like a VIP guest arriving in 10 minutes or a missed payroll document, get done first. For tasks that are important but not urgent, like updating the office supply inventory or organizing digital files, I schedule specific blocks of time later in the day to focus on them. I also find it helpful to break larger, more daunting tasks into smaller, manageable steps so I don't feel overwhelmed. Throughout the day, I constantly check my list and adjust as new urgent requests come in. I think communication with the team is the most critical part of this process. If I realize that a new urgent task is going to delay a project I promised to a manager, I let them know immediately. I'd rather say, I am currently handling an emergency at the front desk, and your report will be delayed by an hour, than to just let the deadline pass in silence.
That proactive communication is exactly what we need. Let's talk about growth. What happens if your boss asks you to handle a task that you've never done before and you have no idea how to start?
When I am faced with an unfamiliar task, my first step is to clarify the expectations. I want to know what success looks like for that specific task and what the hard deadline is. I'll ask questions like, is there a specific format you'd like this in? Or is there a previous example I can look at to ensure I am on the right track? Once I have the parameters, I break the task down into smaller steps and do my own research. I'll check internal manuals, look for documentation, or ask a trusted colleague for a quick tip to fill in my knowledge gaps. If I still feel I am lacking the necessary skills, I will be honest and request specific training or resources. I believe it is better to ask for guidance early than to spend 3 hours doing a task incorrectly. The key is to show a willingness to learn and be proactive. I want my boss to see that I am capable of figuring things out, but that I also have the judgment to ask for help when it is necessary to ensure the quality of the work.
That's a great balance of independence and accountability. Let's talk about security. The front desk is essentially the gatekeeper. What would you do if you noticed an unattended bag in the lobby or received a package that looked suspicious?
In a situation involving potential security threats, safety is the only priority. My first step would be to stay calm and, most importantly, not touch or move the item. Moving a suspicious package can be dangerous. I would immediately notify security or the designated emergency contact for the building while maintaining a safe distance from the object. I would then follow the company's established emergency protocols. Depending on the level of suspicion, that might mean evacuating the immediate area or locking down certain sections of the building to prevent others from entering the danger zone. I would also inform my supervisor and, if the protocol dictates, ensure that local law enforcement is contacted. Throughout the entire process, I would focus on clear, calm communication with other staff and visitors. The goal is to maintain total safety and follow the law, but to do so in a way that doesn't cause unnecessary panic.
Very clear. Now, regarding sensitive information. You may be asked to handle HR documents, things like payroll, performance reviews, or medical notes. What 3 specific precautions would you take to ensure that data remains secure?
Data security is paramount, especially with HR documents. First, I would restrict access strictly to authorized personnel. For digital files, this means using strong, unique passwords and secure folders with limited permissions. Physical documents would never be left on the desk. They would go straight into a locked cabinet. Second, I would implement a strict handling protocol. This means keeping a log of who accessed the files and when. Accountability is the best deterrent against security breaches. If someone needs a document, there is a paper trail of that request. Third, I would ensure that all digital copies are encrypted and that physical copies are disposed of through a secure process, like cross-cut shredding, as soon as they are no longer needed. I believe in the principle of least privilege. Only the people who absolutely need the information to do their jobs should have access to it.
I like the mention of the principle of least privilege. Let's move back to the interpersonal side. You'll be dealing with a wide variety of people. How do you adapt your communication style when you are speaking to, say, a highly technical expert versus a non-technical visitor?
Adapting my style is all about adjusting the language, the level of detail, and the focus based on who I am talking to. When I am speaking with a highly technical expert, I use precise terminology. I assume a certain level of familiarity with the concepts we are discussing, and I dive straight into the specifics, data, processes, or technical challenges. I keep it concise, data-driven, and efficient because technical experts usually value accuracy and brevity. However, when I am speaking to a non-technical visitor, I strip away the jargon. I simplify the ideas and focus on the practical impact or the overall benefit. I use analogies and real-world examples to make sure the information is accessible. I adopt a more conversational and patient tone to ensure they feel comfortable and engaged, rather than intimidated by technical language. The goal is to make the information relevant to their specific perspective, without making them feel overwhelmed or out of the loop.
That shows a lot of emotional intelligence. Now let's talk about the internal health of the office. What does the ideal relationship look like between the front desk and the other internal departments? How do you aim to support them?
The ideal relationship is one built on clear communication, mutual respect, and proactive collaboration. I don't view the front desk as just a gatekeeper. I view it as a service hub for the entire company. My goal is to deeply understand each department's specific needs, their priorities, and the challenges they face. If I know that the sales team is in the middle of a huge quarterly push, I can be more proactive in managing their visitors and keeping their schedules clear of distractions. If I know the HR team is onboarding 5 new people on Monday, I can ensure all the badges and welcome packets are ready before they even have to ask. I want the internal departments to see me as a partner. This means being responsive to their requests, but also anticipating what they need before they ask for it. I believe in regular check-ins and feedback loops to make sure I am actually helping them and not becoming a bottleneck. When there is trust and transparency, the whole office runs more efficiently.
That's a very proactive mindset. I want to ask you about a specific failure scenario. Imagine a long-term, valued client is upset because they were promised a meeting time, but that meeting was cancelled without any notice. They are on the phone and they are very unhappy. What escalation process do you follow?
With a long-term client, the priority is damage control and relationship salvage. My first step is active listening. I let them express their frustration, fully without interrupting. I apologize sincerely and honestly, taking full responsibility for the oversight on behalf of the company. I might say, I am incredibly sorry that this happened. This is not the level of service we aim to provide, and I understand why you are upset. Next, I immediately gather the facts. I need to find out who is responsible for the scheduling and why the communication broke down. I don't do this to blame someone, but to ensure I can explain to the client that we are fixing the root cause. Then, I escalate the issue to the appropriate manager or team lead. Because it is a long-term client, it is often important for a higher-level executive to be aware of the friction, so they can offer a personal apology if necessary. While that is happening, I work to reschedule the meeting at the client's earliest convenience, and I might offer some form of accommodation, like a priority time slot or a specific resource, to rebuild. That trust, I follow up with them personally to ensure the new arrangement is seamless.
You have a very systematic way of thinking. To wrap things up, I want to look toward the future. Beyond the basic phone lines and calendars we've discussed, what advanced technology do you believe would actually improve the efficiency of a modern front desk?
I believe the biggest leap in efficiency would come from an integrated visitor management system combined with artificial intelligence. Imagine a system where guests can pre-register via QR code. When they arrive, they scan in. The system automatically notifies the host via a messaging app, and the visitor is guided to their destination. This removes the manual data entry and the constant back-and-forth phone calls to see if a guest has arrived. Furthermore, AI-driven chatbots or voice assistants could handle routine inquiries, like directions, office hours, or basic FAQ, freeing up the front desk staff for more complex, human-centric tasks. We could also see facial recognition for registered employees to speed up security checks. When these systems are synced with calendar tools, the front desk gets real-time data on visitor flow, which allows us to manage the lobby much more effectively. It transforms the front desk from a reactive position to a proactive, data-driven operation.
That's a very forward-thinking answer. One last thing, just for the sake of the basics, could you name 3 types of office equipment you are fully proficient in using?
Yes, absolutely. I am fully proficient in using high-volume multi-line phone systems for managing complex call routing, professional-grade scanners for digitizing and archiving documents, and multifunction printers for producing high-quality physical reports and documents.
Perfect. Well, I think we've covered everything I needed to. I've really enjoyed hearing how you approach the role. You've given a lot of depth to your answers, and it's clear you take ownership of your work. Do you have any questions for me, or should we wrap it up here?
I actually have a few questions about the team culture, but if we are pressed for time, I am happy to wrap up. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss how my experience fits with your needs. I am very excited about the possibility of joining your team.
I appreciate that. We will be in touch by the end of the week with our decision. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.